Do these screenshots look like a Civ game to you? Well, recently, in fact this morning, in Microsoft's Summer Game Fest announcement, they revealed this, Ara History Untold, from Oxide Games, and as it shows you here in the trailer, a new turn-based strategy game, and a historical one at that. And as a regular player of Sid Meier's Civilization and Humankind, as you can imagine, this one's got me fairly excited. So in this video, I'm going to show you the trailer, as well as some screenshots that I've dug up and some information from their website, insider program, and interviews to try and figure out exactly what is Ara History Untold, how will it fit into the genre, and also reveal some information that we already know about civs that will be in it, about maybe how the game might work, when it might release. It's still early days, but as you can see from the trailer, it's very much painting a familiar picture. A familiar picture to players who have played Sid Meier's Civilization and Humankind. This is, and I quote, a game about building a nation and leading people through history to the pinnacles of human achievement. And you can see them play out here in the trailer. You've probably seen wonders or human progression, technology as it's moving through the ages, right? You can see that playing out right here, right now. They go on to say that the game is about exploring new lands. There's that 4X mechanic, developing arts and culture, diplomacy, science, and head-to-head battles with our rivals. Now that's the trailer concluded, but that's not all of the information we have. I will show and reflect on some Civilization and Humankind gameplay perhaps through this video, but more importantly also, I want to delve into some of these screenshots that weren't revealed at the release, that weren't revealed at Microsoft's event, but that do give us some information about this game. It's important to note they are pre-alpha, very early screenshots, but in this one here we get a zoomed in look at the map. You can see a very familiar wonder, and also get a feel for perhaps how the tiles or districts are laid out. You can see that they're not perfectly the same shape, but there are black lines drawing around little areas on this map. Again, they're not hexagonal. There's sort of a fluidity to it, it appears, a flexibility to it. The broader game does sort of promote 4 key things on the Insiders program website, and I think they give us a little bit of a feel as to how this thing could actually play out. The first catchline is explore a living world, and essentially the message that they're trying to get across here, and of course I'll put it all on screen so that you can pause and read it in your own time. The really key detail is about each citizen has a unique story that you create and influence with your decisions. Infinite replayability arises through each game's procedurally generated environment and the unique challenges it creates. So 2 things here. Firstly, it's a procedurally generated world. We would expect that from a 4X game or a similar kind of Civ-like strategy game, so nice to see that it's here. The second thing, and we'll cover this a little bit further later because it relates to some later points, is around this idea that each citizen has a unique story. Now that could just be sort of PR catchline trying to build up the game, but there is also seemingly an underlying, not quite Crusader Kings element, but certainly an element of characters, of stories, and of civilizations, and how those stories are told. And that might not make a huge amount of sense to you. You might just be thinking, well, there are civs already in Civilization 6, so what does that mean? My inkling here is that there is an underlying element of some sort of character development weaved into this game as well. It's not just that the world itself is procedurally generated, but actually that there are living, real characters in it. The extent and how that plays out, we don't know yet. So I will end this point here, other than to say that I think we shouldn't necessarily just go into this game expecting it to be just like Civilization. There may be either Crusader Kings or Old World-like elements, and if you've played Old World with its character development and each year is a year in their life and they sort of live through and gain traits, you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about there. Either way, I'll leave that there and stop speculating further. The next point is about ruling our way, and here we get some insights into what civilizations are in the game, and actually how we could potentially create one ourselves, sort of blending that Civilization 6 historical accuracy of their leaders with Humankind's character creation, or perhaps Old World's character and familial development. Either way, it goes on to say that we can take up the mantle with 3 confirmed civilizations. Firstly, the Egyptians, secondly, the Greeks, and lastly, George Washington of the US of A. So we see here a mixture of old and new, and I think that's another important thing to note. This game will clearly span the entire length of history, or at least enable us to play with characters from the entire length of history, unlike, say, a game like Old World, where it's quite specific and focused on a very carefully planned and meticulously designed time period. The other thing here to note is that finally it does say, or bring your own custom leader to life. This opens up a whole load of possibilities. How will these custom leaders be created? Will we create them ourselves or merge existing qualities of leaders? Do we develop them as the game progresses, or do we play it from the start? We'll have to find out more information as we move through. The next thing that they note is about actually building a nation itself. And this relates back to that living world thing, right? They go to say that your land is your canvas. You can construct a variety of buildings, and these will be familiar to many 4X players. Libraries to citadels. So we've got research, we've got military, we've got cathedrals, and they go on to say that all of them will provide strategic bonuses as well. Then, get this, weave a future of infinite possibilities by researching diverse technologies, each one unlocking new kinds of resources, improvements, goods, and equipment. This, to me, is really positive news. This sounds like the sort of classic fundamentals that you need for a 4X game, right? We have science, we have faith, we have military buildings, we have researching technology trees, resources, equipment's good, all of the things that you need to develop a 4X world. And if we take a look at another screenshot now, we might be able to see that play out. Up in the top left, you can see resources. You can see science, you can see something that looks like wood, money, stone, all of that kind of thing. In the top right, a research tree, and seemingly buttons underneath it for things like civics, military, game options, diplomacy. Loads of things on, of course, the map itself as well. Look at those areas and districts divided up. You can see some military units on it. It did look a little bit complex and complicated, so you're welcome to go back through. We'll also look at a couple more screenshots before the end of the video, though, to try and sort of bring these points home. But the real main point that I want to articulate here is it looks like we have the bones and the structure of a 4X game, or a strategy game, I should say, that we would know and love. It's good to see resources and science and all that sort of crap building in, because it's a fundamental base layer. Finally, and this one is also interesting around victory conditions and how the gameplay will actually work, proving our worth. The final thing that they talk about is that we'll grow a nation and be prepared to defend it. Our people will rely on both our decisions, interesting, and our ability to predict our opponent's next move. Sure, putting our skills as a leader to the ultimate test. Great. There is some information that they actually don't upfront in this tooltip that I think is interesting to note. And I was digging through a couple of developer interviews to try and figure out not only just the history of them and of this game, but how it might actually play in practice. One thing that I want to note firstly is that they have a really interesting point around victory conditions. Something that 4X games always handle slightly differently from one another, right? Do we just build a spaceship and that's your victory? Or do you follow the Humankind pathway where you earn fame points? There are lots of different ways to approach it, and it appears as though Ara History Untold will approach it slightly differently. Ara History Untold, and I quote, has no set path to victory, with no preset paths leading to endless possibilities. That's an interesting one. We don't have any more details, so all I could do is speculate. I can't help but think that maybe it could follow sort of a Humankind-like approach where it's building up something passively in the background, perhaps even more passively than Humankind's fame system. I'm not sure. We'll have to see how that plays out. But the other interesting little gem of information that I wanted to pull out here was actually a quote from what the narrator says in the trailer. The narrator says, quote, "What about the history that could have been if you were its architect? How would you reshape the world? What new stories would you tell?" This, of course, fits nicely with the literally the game's name, right? Ara History Untold. About that historical journey built on fact, built perhaps on a world that we might recognize, or wonders or leaders that we may recognize, but then it's sort of an open playbook to us. And so you can see how those two things are relating, right? Firstly, they're trying to make it seemingly as open as they can, and secondly, there are no preset pathways to victory. So maybe it will be a more flexible victory condition 4X game. We will have to wait and see how it progresses. So, as I said at the start of the video, this is a Microsoft game. It was announced at the Bethesda event that happened this morning, and it's developed by a creator called Oxide Games. They've previously worked on strategy games, a title called Ashes of Singularity, for example, sort of a real-time tactical strategy game, fairly positively reviewed, but not overwhelmingly smashing its way into the limelight. This was not a huge game like Civilization 6, or really, in my experience anyway, even compared to something like Humankind, I don't think it quite scratched that surface. However, as they move through into a new historical turn-based strategy game, and moreover, actually, than just that, on the Steam page, they go on to mention it's more of a grand strategy game, which is really interesting because grand strategy tends to be a little more complex and it tends to have a lot more intricate systems. So if you think about something that comes out of Paradox, for example, maybe Victoria 3, we saw a trailer for that as well. There are more detailed systems, perhaps around diplomacy or logistics, these kinds of things that play out on top of the canvas of a historical grand strategy game. It seems like it has all of the elements that we might need, and it comes from a developer, while not incredibly well known as, say, Sid Meier's or whatever, for example, still has some background in strategy and similar games. I note also that Stardock Entertainment are involved with this as well, a studio that has also captured my interest before and has probably captured yours too, perhaps. With experience with games like Galactic Civilizations 3 and Off-World Trading Company, I think we're in fairly safe hands. At least, let's hope so. Finally, as we look to the last screenshot, I really can't give you much detail around the release, I'm sorry. All that we know is, though, thankfully, it will be out within the next 12 months. Xbox, Microsoft made it really clear that all of the things that they were showcasing would be playable and out within the next 12 months. Let's hope there aren't any delays. The industry as a whole has suffered many delays recently. We'll have to wait and see. Do let me know what you think of Ara History Untold. I think it will fit in nicely on my channel, and I intend to cover it more in future if you're interested. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.